Chapter 665 to 667. Boom! 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 A series of explosions reverberated in the forest, and amidst these explosions, the figure of Danzo dragged a series of afterimages and shuttled between the trees, herbs, and shrubs seemingly unharmed. From time to time, his body would flicker, and every time it did, painful screams of Kumogakure shinobi would resound on the battlefield. No one among the Kumogakure squad except the Yondaime Raikage was able to keep up with Danzo's speed at this moment. Damn! Seeing his shinobis being slaughtered by Danzo one after another, and that too in his very presence, Yondaime Raikage grew furious by the minute. However, he was helpless. Earlier, I was able to beat Danzo in terms of speed and power, so he was confident that no matter what means Danzo uses in the battle, the old man would be beaten by him. But as the battle started, I quickly realized how wrong he was. True, he has mastered the lightning chakra mode that gives him good reflexes, immense power, and most of all, speed. But that speed seems to be nothing in the face of Danzo's swift release. Much less stopping Danzo, Raikage is finding it hard to be able to keep up with Danzo's speed. Raikage wondered, how is it possible? Even Hiruko wasn't as fast as he is. Just how? In fact, Raikage was finding the situation before him quite strange. Danzo's speed was too fast. Fine. But what was up with his combat skills? Oh. And for all those wondering that Danzo's combat skills have also improved significantly along with his speed, they have degraded far too much. Based on what I is seeing, it is as if Danzo doesn't even know the first thing about combat. All he is relying on at this moment is his speed, which is quite strange and a matter to be frowned upon. But it is also a blessing at this moment, for if that was not the case, the number of casualties his shinobis would have suffered at this moment would have been much more. Whoosh! Another flicker. Another shinobi fell. Thump. Plop. As the blood of the shinobi splattered on his face, a strange expression dawned on Danzo's face. It seemed to be the joy, excitement, and pride that a new shinobi would have on succeeding in killing his enemies. Raikage muttered to himself in confusion. What the hell's going on? Although he was unable to figure out the situation before him, this didn't stop him from doing his best to stop Danzo. Lightning Operation Horizontal. As Raikage used his nintaijutsu, an enormous amount of lightning gathered on his hand, and using his hand like a battle axe made out of lightning, he slashed it towards Danzo, creating a thunder blast. Boom! Facing one of the most dangerous nintaijutsu of Danzo was unable to resist head-on and instantly flew out like a cannonball, slammed into trees, creating holes in them, and finally smashed into the ground, creating a deep pit. After delivering such a powerful and dangerous blow to Danzo, Raikage panted heavily, and after recovering, he turned towards Kumogakure shinobi and instructed, "Seal his body inside a scroll, and we will immediately be leaving the hinterlands of the Land of Fire." Raikage did not worry whether Danzo is really dead or not. Raikage has confidence that no one can survive such an attack after taking it head-on. In Raikage's eyes, Danzo is already a corpse. Understood, Raikage-sama. His shinobi nodded and got to work. They too were convinced that Danzo is dead after taking Raikage's lightning operation horizontal. Head-on. They couldn't have been more wrong. As Kumogakure shinobi walked towards the pit, where the supposed corpse of Danzo should be lying, they heard a sound. Kacha. It was the sound of a twig being stepped upon, and it definitely came from the pit. The Kumogakure shinobi looked at each, others' faces as the figure of Danzo walked out of the smoke step by step. Although the Hokage robe he was wearing was tattered, his body had no signs of damage whatsoever. Witnessing such an unrealistic situation before them, all the Kumogakure shinobi were taken aback. But how? How is this even possible? What sort of monster has he become? Has he really become a perfect shinobi just like Haruko of the Five Styles? Even Raikage was out of his wits and realized that he could no longer assess Danzo before him with the same eyes. The supposed old man standing before them had completely changed. He was no longer the same guy he used to be. He had become a monster, just like Haruko. As Danzo walked out of the smoke, his demeanor and aura were completely different from a while ago. It was as if the Danzo standing before them at this very moment was a completely different Danzo from a while ago. Although his expression was still a bit dignified, there was neither any trace of nervousness or anxiousness on his face, nor was there anger or insidiousness hidden in his eyes. Danzo glanced at the Kumogakure shinobi surrounding him, then quickly formed the hand signs and shouted, "Vapor style, solid fog jutsu," as he released a large amount of acidic mist from his mouth. The acidic mist quickly played its role, and the Kumogakure shinobi, who weren't prepared for such an attack, started to suffer and cry out in pain and misery. "My eyes... I can't see anything. Ah! My face is melting. This is the vapor style of Kirigakure. Everyone, use wind style to blow away the acidic mist, or we'll all be dead." After being reminded by one of their companion shinobi, the Kumo shinobi, who could use wind style, used their jutsu to blow away the mist, while the rest tried to distance themselves from the mist. But even with timely action, there were still a few casualties among the ranks of Kumogakure shinobis. As the Kumogakure shinobis distanced themselves from the acidic mist, Danzo also moved, and in the blink of an eye, he had already pierced and crushed the hearts of 7 shinobis surrounding him. Unlike before, this time his combat skills were not poor. And this shocked Ai. How did he improve so much in such little time? I was able to feel it. Danzo at this moment was completely different from Danzo a while ago. The face and body of the man are still the same, however. He is a completely different person. And while I was wondering in confusion, Danzo was doing his job. With the help of swift release and crystal release, Danzo started a killing streak. All the shinobi surrounding him were elites, however. These elites were being ruthlessly killed by him with ease. One after another, shinobi fell, and the next number was of Dodai. Dodai could see Danzo's eyes on him, and he understood that he was the next target. However, in the face of speed that could outrun the fastest Raikage, he knew he wouldn't be able to put up any resistance. Seeing Danzo appear before him, Dodai closes his eyes, accepting his fate. He understands very well that he is going to die. But he doesn't plan to die a meaningless death. He planned to create an opportunity for Raikage-sama, using his life. And so, he tried his best. And for a moment, it seemed to work. He didn't understand why, but strangely enough, Dodai was able to keep up with Danzo. Ding, 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 ding. Their kunai collided with one another, creating sparks of metal collision. While having a heated battle with Danzo, Dodai was thinking of what he could do to create an opportunity for Raikage-sama, and just as he thought of a strategy, Danzo's movement came to an abrupt end and he shouted, "Stop!" Dodai, other Kumo shinobis, as well as I, all were taken aback and looked at Danzo in confusion and stated, "It's too late to beg for mercy, Danzo." Danzo clutched his head and shook his head painfully. "Stop it. It's not Danzo. It's me, Hamu." Hamu? Everyone was taken aback, be it Raikage, Dodai, or other Kumogakure shinobi. More so, given the fact that Hamu is the name of the boy who awakened the storm release, Keki Genkai, and went missing not long ago. Raikage took a step forward, the lightning surrounding him roaring fiercely as he questioned, "Danzo, are you trying to mock me?" Danzo shook his head and knelt on one knee as he replied, "Raikage-sama, it's really me, Hamu. This man's ritual had some flaw in it, which is why I am able to take control of his body at this moment. It is really me. Please believe me." Yondaime glared at Danzo for a moment, then said, "Prove it. Prove that you are indeed Hamu." Danzo questioned, "How?" I said, "Tell me something that only the two of us know." Danzo thought for a while, then nodded. "On the night I awaken." However, before he could continue any further, the sound of shinobis approaching them reached their ears. Danzo got worried and hurriedly said, "Raikage-sama! I will prove that I am indeed Hamu later. Right now we must leave. More than 1,500 Konoha shinobi were present near the volcano, and they are probably the ones approaching us. I don't know how many of them are still alive, but we can't risk being seen by them. We must leave. Right now." After Danzo hurriedly left with Yondaime Raikage and his fellow Kumo shinobi, Orochimaru slowly walked out of the shadows. At the same time, Homusubi also came out from behind a big tree and stood near him. After a moment of silence, Orochimaru withdrew his gaze and asked Homusubi, "Why did you not try to stop him?" Homusubi asked the same question. "Why didn't you?" Orochimaru shook his head. "You know that I no longer have an ace up my sleeve, and neither do I have the strength to fight against Danzo in the presence of Yondaime Raikage. Stopping him would have been a very difficult task for me." "Difficult?" "Yes," nodded Homusubi, then added after a pause, "But impossible?" "Certainly. No." Orochimaru chuckled. "It seems you know me quite well." Then added after a pause, "And what about you? What excuses do you have?" Homusubi said helplessly, "The volcano collapsed, so I wasn't able to make it here on time." Orochimaru said, "So it seems." But these were just empty words. Orochimaru is clear that Homusubi was here on time, and if she really wanted, she could have stopped Danzo from leaving. But she didn't, which can only mean that she too has realized it. And it is exactly as Orochimaru thought. Homusubi was not affected by the collapsed and erupted volcano, although it seemed that she would be buried in it. However, using the defense of Susanoo, she was able to safely make it out alive and saw something unexpected the moment she arrived here. The silence lasted for a while, until Homusubi broke it with her solemn words. "Our cooperation ends here." Orochimaru nodded. "I suppose it does." After thinking for a while, Homusubi added coldly, "You better not spread the word about the ceremony to anyone. Otherwise, the consequences wouldn't be very good. A Matsukami is different from a Katsuki. Offending us is something you can't afford, and you can't escape our anger even if you hide in the depths of Ryuchi Cave." "Humph," Orochimaru shorted coldly, then used body flicker jutsu to disappear. To be honest, Homusubi is not that worried about Orochimaru publicizing the effects of the newly improved Chimera Jutsu and Kekkei Genkai absorption ritual, as well as their involvement in it. She knows Orochimaru would never do something so foolish, because doing so would make him one of the enemies of the entire shinobi world, which is something he definitely doesn't want at this time. Well, all that aside, after Orochimaru left, Homusubi once again glanced in the direction Danzo left with the Raikage and his entourage, and then she, too, disappeared. Anchor Vantian Kuroto's laboratory. After erasing all signs of Homusubi's presence at the volcano, Kuroto returned to the floating fortress. Here, firstly, he calmed her mind, then recorded every bit of information about what happened during the Kekkei Genkai absorption ritual. True, many unexpected things happened during the ritual, among which some were acceptable and some were unacceptable. Overall, the effect of the ritual was beyond what he had expected. After witnessing this ritual, Kuroto can certainly say that attaining Kekemora is not impossible. It is no longer just wishful thinking or a theoretical possibility, but a goal that is practically achievable as long as all the conditions are met. One after another, all the details were recorded, and soon the ledger was completed with a brief summary. The effect of the newly developed chimera buds is also very good. Although there is indeed some hidden danger that they carry, however, this problem is not unsolvable. There was also no problem in regards to the arrangement of the ritual ceremony. All the seals did their job perfectly, however. I have to make sure that the altar must be stronger. The altar used by Danzo was also very strong, however it was easily destroyed, which is a bit of a conundrum. The ritual altar is the key to continuing the ceremony until the very end, and Kuroto can't guarantee that he won't lose control over himself during the ritual ceremony, which is why the altar must be very strong, so that, even if he does lose control over himself, at least the altar doesn't get destroyed, such that nothing goes wrong with the ritual ceremony. All of these problems are identified, and if enough attention is paid to them, all of them can be fixed, except one, and that is the problem of chakra. This is the biggest headache. As the problem of chakra came, even Kuroto became helpless. He doesn't seem to have any solution to this problem. The preparations Danzo made for his Kekkei Genkai absorption ritual were supposed to be more than adequate. However, those adequate preparations were still inadequate. Kuroto assumes that even if there were no external interference in the ritual from Homosubi's side, the best Danzo could have managed to achieve would have been a pair of rinnegan, and that too at the cost of the sacrifice of all those 1,500 shinobis. As for Kekemora, don't even dream about it. Kekemora is levels above the rinnegan state, and to reach that state would have required as much chakra as the 10-tailed beast carries, or at least half of it. Even the combined chakra of all the shinobi in existence isn't enough to reach the level of the 9 tails, much less half of the 10 tails. And even if we assume that the chakra of all the shinobi in existence when combined together is enough for attaining Kekemora, how is Kuroto supposed to bring them to the chakra transmission array and drain them of their chakra until they are sucked dry and die of chakra loss? To make almost all the shinobis in existence obediently stand on the chakra transmission array while their chakra is being sucked dry until they all die? Even if Kuroto were to become Hokage, he still wouldn't be able to do such an outrageous thing. What's more, he doesn't want his Kekkei Genkai absorption ceremony to become public knowledge to avoid involving unnecessary people in it in any way, to make sure that the ceremony isn't interfered with by outsiders in any way, because the more people involved in it, the more troublesome it would become, and the more difficult it would be to manage. In fact, if circumstances were to permit, Kuroto would much rather prefer to carry out the ritual alone. However, the problem of chakra is still a problem that has to be solved. Maybe I can... Suddenly, Kuroto thought of an idea, but it was discarded soon, and Kuroto drove this thought out of his mind. The method he thought of to solve the problem of chakra source was actually very simple, that is, to allow Black Zetsu's Project Tsuki no Mi to continue and allow him to rescue Kaguya. As long as Jubi is resurrected, the infinite Tsukuyomi is cast upon the shinobi world, and the entire shinobi world is bound to the roots of the God Tree, then there will be no problem with chakra, as the chakra of the entire shinobi world would gather together. But this idea is too risky, which is why this approach can't be used. If the Akatsuki organization were to revive the Jubi and cast the light of infinite Tsukuyomi on the moon, at that time, Kuroto would be forced to face either Nagato in the six-path state, Obito in the six-path state, or Madara in the six-path state, or probably unsealed Kaguya. Regardless of which of the four he ends up dealing with, Kuroto knows that he wouldn't be able to put up much of a fight. Therefore, it is better to not allow Akatsuki to revive Jubi. Of course, there is one more approach. Kuroto himself can try to collect all the 9 Biju, revive Jubi, then cast the light of infinite Tsukuyomi on the moon to unit all the chakra into himself. But Kuroto knows that if he were to do such a thing, the Sage of Six Path won't stand by silently. He will definitely take some kind of action, and by that time, Kuroto's fate would be no different from any typical villain. In conclusion, it can be said that reviving the Jubi and using the infinite Tsukuyomi is not an appropriate solution to the problem. Looks like I will have to find some other way. With these words, Kuroto highlighted the chakra problem and closed his ledger. In fact, there are quite a lot of chakra sources scattered all over the shinobi world. Reviving Jubi or extracting chakra from shinobis are just two of those methods that are on the dangerous and crueler side. The other methods are the method that Haruko adopted, absorbing energy from celestial phenomena, such as aurora waves or perhaps solar or lunar eclipse. Then, there is also the option of using some kind of medication, such as Takigakuri's Hero Water or Akamichi Clan's 3-colored pills, which would temporarily give him high chakra. In fact, these are not the only options. Kuroto can also opt for something else, such as using fuinjutsu such as Yin Seal to store chakra reserves over the years that he can use during the ritual, or perhaps some kind of forbidden jutsu like Hachiman Tonku that would temporarily increase his chakra while the gates are open, or maybe some other forbidden jutsu that would give him incredible chakra boost at the cost of burning away his life. Other than all these options, Giant Tenseigan on the moon and the other Giant Tenseigan that is probably hidden somewhere in the shinobi world are two of the many chakra sources that can be used during the ritual to maintain the chakra supply. As long as Kuroto obtains these two Giant Tenseigans, to some extent, he will be able to solve the problem of chakra. In short, there are many methods to solve the problem of chakra. All Kuroto has to do is identify the useful ones and get his hands on them. After making a list of things he could use to solve the problem of chakra, Kuroto walked out of the archive room of Ancor Vantian and came to the cloning room. Inside the cloning room, a large number of cloning tanks were placed, and in each of these tanks, a clone was floating. In total, there were 30 cloning tanks, hence a total of 30 clones. The clones were of various varieties. Some had long hair, while some had small hair with various shades of golden blonde, blackish brown, and reddish brown. Some were tall, some were short, some were males, while the others were females. One thing common in all of them was that they all had white eyes that were unfinished Byakugan. These 30 or so clones are Earth Chakra nature clones that Kuroto cultivated. Their quality is very high as they were created using the most cutting-edge technology that the shinobi world has to offer at this point in time. But that's not important. What's important is that all these 30 clones are second-generation clones, and all these 30 clones carry the genetic material of 4 people at the same time, unlike all the previous ones that carry only the genetic material of only 2 people. The purpose of incorporating the genetic material of 4 people is to bring the best out of all 4 and make a clone that is in perfect synchronization with the Earth Chakra nature clone, such that the final clone has no problem learning the dust release Keke Tota. Among the 4 people whose genetic material Kuroto used, one is obviously himself, while the other 3 are Deidara, Terumi Mei, and finally Kurotsuchi. Although this is the first time he created a clone using the genetic material of 4 people, given the status of clones before him, he would say the result is not bad. Of course, it would still take around a month for the clones to be ready, but based on the data he has collected of these clones so far, 2 clones seem to meet his requirements. After a while of observation, Kuroto couldn't help but mutter with a sigh. Although quite unexpected, Deidara's cells seem to have a very good aptitude for fusion, and only because of that aptitude was I able to fuse the genetic material of 4 people. I suppose I should thank him. With that, Kuroto turned off the lights of the cloning room. Iwagakure. Choo. At the same time as Kuroto was appreciating Deidara's cells, there was a loud sneeze in the Tsuchikagi's office. Deidara wiped clean his nose, then did a dogeza in front of Sandaime Tsuchikage and apologized. "Old man, the shinobi world is too dangerous. I understand I was wrong. I shouldn't have stolen the forbidden jutsu. Please forgive me this time and take me back into the village. Otherwise, those people from the Akatsuki and Amatsukami organization wouldn't leave me alone." Onoki snorted coldly. "Humph. You betrayed the village by stealing a secret scroll. Do you think it is so easy for you to come back?" Although he said so on the surface, internally, Onoki was very happy with Deidara's return. The situation of today's Iwagakure is very bad. That's not to say that the strength of the village is weak or anything. The strength of the village is fine, and there are many elite shinobis in Iwagakure. The only problem is all of them are elites. There is no other Kage class shinobi in Iwagakure except him. As such, the burden on his shoulders is a bit too much. Fortunately, Onoki has been able to hold his own up until now, even with his small stature and old shoulders. Otherwise, Iwagakure would have fallen by now, and its status as one of the 5 great shinobi villages would be in jeopardy. But Onoki has already passed his prime, and he is aware that his strength is declining with each passing day, so he needs someone, possibly a Kage-class shinobi, as his successor. Someone who can lead Iwagakure and carry the village on their shoulders. But it's a pity that Onoki wasn't able to find such a candidate up until now. In Onoki's eyes, Deidara did have that potential, but the kid turned out to be defiant and had no other interests other than his art, and how that art is an explosion. The waste of potential really ached Onoki's heart. But now that Deidara has returned, hope has awakened in Onoki's heart. He may not show anything on the surface, but as said before, he is really joyful within. Onoki feels that the future of the shinobi world is full of stormy waves. Therefore, he knows that Iwagakure would need a strong Tsuchikage such that Iwagakure can stand tall in those storms. And Deidara is a candidate who can lead Iwagakure in those troubled times. While Onoki was having an inner monologue, Deidara looked at him with a determined expression and said, "Old man Onoki, I want to learn your dust release." Onoki was taken aback by Deidara's sudden words. He studied Deidara's expression for a while, then questioned with a smile, "You want to learn dust release? Then what about your art? If I remember correctly, once you stated that you only care about your art. Why a sudden change of heart?" Deidara recalled the embarrassment he experienced when fighting against Homusubi, and how he was mesmerized by that goddess-like figure bathed in golden flames and even questioned his belief in art. Recalling that feeling, he couldn't help but grit his teeth and say, I suddenly started to think that breaking down things at the molecular level is also very artistic, which is why I want to learn dust release."